Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's agenda, we have Chung, founder and CEO of ReJoule, a company focused on extending batteries' useful lives and allowing them to store energy all over again. So, welcome, Steven. Super happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. So, hi everyone. I'm Steven Chung, the CEO at ReJoule. We are a battery diagnostic startup company here in Southern California in the LA area. And my background is in electrical engineering. So I have a master's from the University of Toronto. I got my bachelor's in UC Irvine. And prior to doing ReJoule, I also worked in the defense industry. We were doing battery systems for Navy ships and submarines. So that was some good real world experience for me. And I really got excited about electric vehicles relatively early on. Was following Tesla as it was well before it became a household name. And then in grad school, I came across this idea of reusing batteries. Electric vehicle batteries. And that's really what ReJoule is trying to solve, is this looming problem of all the battery waste coming from these electric vehicles. And we see, at least here in California, we see Teslas everywhere, more and more electric vehicles. There's a lot of batteries in them. And we got to figure out what to do with them once those batteries are no longer useful in that electric vehicle. And so one of the things that I'm extremely passionate about is figuring out, what are the best ways to responsibly dispose of those batteries, and hopefully in most cases we can actually reuse them and have that battery continue to provide useful life.
So you started as an electrical engineering,
Yep.
And then what happened? Like, were you always interested in the environment, or was it something that you found out in the meantime?
It was always something that was interesting to me. I always grew up thinking, we put things back where we left them. Don't take more than what you need. And so that was, what drove a lot of my interest in doing sustainability. So not necessarily, we need to save all the trees, but hey, what we're doing isn't sustainable. Let's figure out a better way to, not just waste so much of, resources and what we're doing.
I wanted to ask you as well, like, I know that your sister, if I'm correct, she's your co-founder. So how
Yes.
it has been that experience like?
Fun, because I think we had a better relationship than a lot of people. A lot of people when they find out that we're brother and sister, the first thing they say is, "Wow, I don't think I can't even imagine working with my siblings." So it's actually really fun. There's a lot of inside jokes during meetings, going way back when. And then also there's that element of trust. So it was, finding a co-founder is so difficult, and there is a mutual trust already. And then I think as we've continued to work together over the years, there's been more and more mutual respect for what each of us bring to the table.
And also in these first years of ReJoule, if I'm correct, like, you have been around for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And how is your first experience getting the first investors?
Yeah. And I also want to correct, Zora is actually the CFO, the financial officer.
CFO.
I'm CEO and CTO. Our first institutional investment was actually just this past year, where we raised an oversubscribed pre-seed round, and Zora actually took care of most of that, and that was really good. So I can kind of focus on our existing customers, existing projects. Our first kind of money bringing in that we brought in from outside was actually from grants. The National Science Foundation has their SBIR program. It took a few tries. There's a few years of figuring things out, but then after we got the first one, it kind of snowballed to, getting 225,000 the first round, and then now we've raised over 5 million in grant funding from either the federal government or the California state government. That first investment was definitely the toughest because investors don't like technical risk, but then the government is okay funding that, so we were able to survive and then eventually thrive off those government grants.
Also, I know that, guys, I did a little bit of research, correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys are supported by a lot of leading organizations in the same state. I didn't know that California was super invested in energy innovation.
Yeah, they're actually, it's really good to be a clean tech entrepreneur here in California because there's so many programs. They actually put a lot of money in. One of our big grant projects is funded by the California Energy Commission. And in that project, we're actually taking used electric vehicle batteries. We've done the testing for them, and we're going to be putting them back onto the grid for grid resiliency to tackle the energy storage problems related to the grid.
Now that we're talking about the product, I wanted to ask you, I mean, since you are the expert here, like, how does it actually work? I know that you guys run the test in less than 5 minutes, which I think is great, because usually I believe it takes 10 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So what's the main difference?
Yeah. So the traditional way to measure how healthy a battery is just to cycle it. You charge and discharge the battery. Depending on the equipment you have, it can take up to 10 hours, and even some protocols, it can be a few days of testing. So our technology is based on a technique called electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, EIS. And we didn't invent that technique. It's well known for the past few decades. But what we've done is we figured out a way to be able to perform that measurement at scale on larger batteries. And so we have a device that can plug into a battery, runs that EIS test. And then we have some machine learning models on top of that is able to predict the usable battery capacity based on the measurements from that test. Yeah.
And I was reading about it. I mean, just like I was telling you, I'm not an expert on batteries, not even an engineer, but I saw that ReJoule can adapt to any kind of battery. And I wanted to ask you, is there any specific kind of battery that it has been the hardest to run the test?
Not particularly. The good thing about EIS is it kind of applies to any electrochemical system. So we can do all types of batteries, even fuel cells. And we have a few customers, asking about that as well. So it's not that one battery chemistry is harder to work with. Actually, one of the bigger challenges is to figure out how do we, what's the best way to connect to that battery? So we have that interoperability issue where some battery manufacturers design it with a different connector. Some battery systems have one type of software that runs it on the battery management system, and so some of the bigger challenges is figuring out how to adapt our baseline technology to really just plug into different battery types.
What would you say that it has been the biggest technical challenge that you have ever managed to solve?
I would say the technical challenge, one of them that we're kind of experiencing is just, it's very difficult to find parts to meet the demand. And so it's, more of a supply chain logistics kind of thing, but that's been a big challenge, especially this year, of finding the right parts to meet the demand. We actually have to redesign some of our systems right now because parts that we used in the past are no longer available.
But what about the pandemic? Did you have any supply chain issues whenever the 2020 happened?
No, I'd say the biggest issue during 2020 was actually just figuring out how to work from home and have all our systems online. Luckily we have a young team. Everyone's used to using their computers and just texting each other on Slack. But that was the bigger issue. We didn't really experience any supply chain shocks until a little bit later. Just the price of everything has gone up. Some of the projects that we're doing, I think the price of copper went up like 4 times in the matter of a few months. So, just dealing with little things like that.
And how many people, talking about the team, how many people did you start a company with, and how many people do you have now?
Yeah, so initially it was just myself, and then I recruited Zora to help out and just have a sounding board, bounce ideas off each other. She joined after about a year, and now we've grown to about 16 full-time people. We got a few part-time people, especially right now during the summer.
Okay. Wow. So you were alone? You were all by yourself for almost a year before
Yeah, and we hired a few people, pretty early on, and we've just grown a lot, especially over the past year.
And how many years have you been in the business now?
I think about almost 6, 5.5, I think, at this point.
Did you ever imagine arriving like being at this point? Because people say that the first 5 years of a startup are the toughest ones.
Right.
So did you ever like imagine or picture yourself reaching or being at this point of your life?
Yeah, definitely. After starting the company, had a lot of grand ambitions as a young entrepreneur. So we definitely saw ourselves at this point, but how we got here was completely different. I mean, nobody expected the pandemic or anything that happened over the past few years, really. But before I started the company, I always knew I wanted to do something. My parents were also business owners, and so they always encouraged us to, be our own bosses. But before starting ReJoule, definitely didn't think about startups or being in the clean technology industry. So it's been a wild ride for sure.
And I mean, I was wondering like who your main customers are nowadays. Have they changed? Did you initially start a company with an idea of who your customers might be, or they were the same, or how it has been this experience?
Yeah. There's definitely been a few pivots. Our customers are anyone who has the responsibility to deal with batteries once they've been manufactured. So, somebody who owns a battery. And then we can get a little bit more deep into that. There's some commercial electric vehicle companies where they kind of manage the life of the batteries, and then they have to deal with, do we recycle this battery, or can we reuse it in a different application, or can I remanufacture it, put it back into my vehicle? It's those types of people. We're looking at selling technology to automakers and battery manufacturers at this point. Yeah.
And one of the last questions, where do you see ReJoule in 5 years?
Yeah, so we're definitely angling ourselves to be kind of a battery testing standard for used batteries. So for things like remanufacturing and repurposing, we want to be at the point where if I'm driving down the road and I see let's say a charging station with solar and battery, then we can say, hey, we helped put that battery in that charging center.
Do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on this tech path?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say for the listeners are a lot of them may be technical, maybe engineers themselves, and I think the biggest advice for them is to talk to more people, just have more conversations and try to learn as much from others as possible. That's something that I struggled with. As an engineer, I wanted to kind of work in a lab and just solve a problem through sheer will and technical expertise. But that's not really how the world works. You need to talk to people. You need to provide a solution to a person. So talk to as many people as possible. And then the follow-up to that is, you can talk to as many people as possible, but you don't always have to listen to their advice, because if you're doing something completely new, no one's done it before. And so when you're talking to advisors or mentors, definitely listen to their point of view, but ultimately the decision is yours to make, because hopefully more about your technology, your business, your product than anyone else.
Most of our audience is filled with engineers, so thank you so much for that advice. I'm pretty sure that it's super helpful, especially for people who are like or want to start a company like you. Thank you so much, Steven, for being here with us and sharing your experiences. Do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, so we have a website, ReJouleEnergy.com. That's ReJoule energy.com. We're also very active on LinkedIn. We have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well, but mostly through the website and on LinkedIn. Yeah.
And remember, guys, that you can find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one with Steven, directly on our website, controlhub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, thank you so much, Steven, for joining us. It was great hearing your experience and your stories about ReJoule.
Yeah, thanks. It was a lot of fun to be here.